All right. Today on the Lions Guy podcast, we're going to be talking about high performance relationships, mainly marriage. And, where I come from, you hear their sayings like I heard a lot of times growing up, happy wife, happy life.
Oh yeah.
I heard a lot of times if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So
Yep.
and I think in a world of performance, the reality is, there's a lot of effects if there's an unhappy home, relationship and so on. So today I've got Seth Studley on, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist. And Seth, welcome to the show. And tell us about yourself, where you come from, what do you do?
Yeah. Hey Dale. Thanks, man. Thanks for so much for having me on. I like what you do. We're in the same category of like, okay, we want to get our stuff together and just do good in all areas, right? And one area that we really focus on is marriage because, like you said, if mom ain't happy, nobody's happy. Happy wife, happy life. We get these messages from growing up and stuff, but then it's like, wait a minute, marriage. This whole marriage thing and having kids and building a family and a home is different than what I thought, right? And sometimes a lot of our clients get stuck, and we're here to guide people through that, to give them real practical advice and really lead from vulnerability. Because me and Melanie had a shitty marriage, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, right? Oh, you're supposed to have it all together, all this stuff, and we didn't. So we share that whole story on our podcast and then help other couples get to where they know that they can be, but they just don't have the tools yet to get there. So that's what we do. I'm from South Carolina originally, moved to Seattle when I was, I don't know, early 20s to go to graduate school and be in a band. We got a record deal, toured the U.S. and stuff, and then finally went to graduate school. Got married. It'll be 17 years coming up in August. And we got 3 kids, and we do the podcast and high performance marriage coaching full time now. And it's a blast, man. Loving every second of it.
That's awesome. And it's great to serve, right? Like kind of playing this coaching role and stuff like that. It's like it's to me, and I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like very fulfilling, getting in there, helping people kind of get gains. My things are gain clarity, have courage, and lead. Really get. And I try to instill those things, and kind of seeing people kind of blossom just for those things. Like especially getting clarity, like airing the stuff out, actually putting some thought into things, and I can see today, man, it just seems like there's so much, I don't know, a challenge with relationships. I mean, and look, and we're going to focus on marriage, but it's holistically, we're all challenged with like the effects of social media and all these things. So we're all challenged in many ways today for weird reasons, like mental health wise. It seems like, man, we're just up against a freaking tsunami of sorts of the making from technology in a way, with all the good that we've gotten from it, right? That it's
Right.
amplified these mental health challenges. I think with seeing the suicide rates up, maybe you can answer if divorce rates are up over the last 10 years, 15 years or
Yeah.
whatever. But man, it's something to talk about, to get in and like be real about
Yeah.
what it takes to make a marriage work.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I like to say is awareness is curative, right? So really, what you're talking about is being aware that we have all these. I don't know. We can call them issues or hardships or whatnot. But sometimes we're so just checked out, and we're just like, okay, go 9 to 5, do this. Wake up at this time, eat dinner this time, blah blah blah. Have this same old conversation with my wife or my husband or whatever, and we just go and go and go on a treadmill, and we're not we're not even aware, right? We
Yeah.
know how like bad we feel about it. Like, I'm not content, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm overeating, I'm drinking too much, I'm neglecting things that I used to care about. And when I say awareness is curative, I like this analogy. So we're out here in the Northwest now, outside of Seattle, and I go hunting and hiking and stuff, and I would much rather know, if I'm on that trail, if a bear is around that tree, right? If I'm aware, then I can react appropriately, right? I'll go the other way. I'll make some noise. I'll scare him off. I'll get a gun or whatever. But if I don't know that it's there, what am I going to do? It's going to walk up on it and be, something bad might happen, right? So being aware of the situation, awareness is curative, right? So when couples, we're talking about marriage right now, when couples are aware, like, oh, wait a minute, my family of origin impacts how I'm showing up as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, as a dad. When we're aware of that, then we can begin to make a change about it and listen to podcasts or go to therapy or do coaching or other resources, read a book. So first of all, we have to be open, and remember, awareness is curative, and that's where one of the things that we walk through our clients. That's the starting point of change, not only in marriage and relationships, but usually anything. Like, oh shit, I'm 50 pounds overweight. I'm now aware of that. Let me do something to affect that in a way that I want it to be affected. Go to the gym, start eating healthy, get some research and education around it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, and it's like being present, and because there's this thing called willful blindness too, right? There's stuff going on, but you're like staying willfully blind to them. You don't want to face them. So that's so gaining awareness in a perspective, like you're acknowledging what's going on, right? I mean, that's really really powerful stuff, I think. And what I don't know, it seems like what's been your experience with folks like tackling conflict in their marriage? Like, do you see people like avoiding things? What's typical?
Yeah. So there's this dynamic in therapy, and we call it in every single person in a relationship has played both these roles, right? And we call it the pursuer and distancer, right? Now think of a time where you got in an argument with your wife or something, and you're like, "No, we got to figure this out." We this has been an issue, and you're going to push in. And sometimes we think, usually guys are the pursuer, like, okay, if I just keep on chasing this, more, she's going to realize maybe she was wrong, or like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But what that does is makes her or him distance themselves. So this dynamic of pursuer distancer, you really have to be aware of, like, okay, what I'm doing right now is not helpful. And if you don't realize that, that's usually when we have the 2 a.m. fights, that just drag on forever about the same old thing. So managing conflict in a relationship, first you have to be aware of, am I the pursuer or the distancer right now? Am I just totally conflict avoidant? Do I hate conflict? Then you might be the distancer, where stuff doesn't get done. You might be driving your partner crazy because they want to resolve a real issue, right? Or you might find yourself being the pursuer, where you're just badgering, come on, we got to do this. But what you're doing is pushing him or her away and saying, hey, this is too much. It's like, give me a chance to breathe a minute, man, right? And so typically on our show, we really lead with vulnerability. So I'll probably use a bunch of examples from our own marriage and life. So I'm pretty much conflict avoidant, right? Do what I need to do to keep the peace or whatever. And then later I just bottle up, and then it kind of blows up, and Melanie's like, where did that come from? You didn't say anything. And she is not conflict avoidant. Oftentimes she's the pursuer. It's like, hey, let's get this done. I'm like, woman, give me some breathing room, kind of thing. So I had to find out, okay, why am I doing that? Why am I conflict avoidant? And just because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad or unhealthy. In fact, I need to lean into that, right? So first assess if you're super conflict avoidant or like conflict pursuant, because there's extremes to both of those, right? And one thing with conflict resolution that we really like to use is it's a tool called the clearing structure, and we can do some links in the show notes and stuff like that. But it's called the clearing structure, and what it does is it takes an issue and says, it uses I statements. It's not like, you always do this, or you never XYZ, because then we're just in the blame game. We're not owning our stuff, right? So one of the keys to a healthy relationship is owning your stuff, completely owning your stuff. So the clearing structure uses I statements, like, hey, when you did this thing, I felt, notice I didn't say, you made me feel, because people can't make us feel things, right? We think they can,
Right.
but they can't.
Right.
When you did this thing, I felt hurt, neglected, sad, kind of pissed, or whatever. What I wanted from that is for us to talk about it in a different way. And it literally goes through 6 steps for conflict resolution. And me and Melanie use that all the time, in fact, because it's just a tool that gets through all the BS. It says, hey, here's the real thing. I need to call it out because I want a good relationship with you. I know if I don't call this out, then we're not going to go closer, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all the stuff. So I'm going to do this tool to, in an attempt to help us resolve this conflict and deepen our relationship, right? The clearing structure. So that's one thing that we use. Another thing, I don't know, going back to the awareness is curative thing, like, we always have to be willing to assess what we contributed to our current situation,
Right.
good or
Yeah.
bad. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
There's
For sure.
this one quote that says, your life, I mean, we could say it right now here, like your life, Dale, my life is a sum of all the choices that we made up until now, good
Yep.
and bad, right?
Yep.
Maybe I'd have, another $500,000 in the bank if I would have done something 2.5 years ago that required more discipline or focus or, whatever. Um, so couples have to really own like, oh man, things are bad because of, our situation, but how did I contribute to the situation? Because when we play the blame game, we just go in circular patterns that just don't work at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're going to read anything that's forward leaning, personal growth, what business, whatever, that doesn't start with taking responsibility, like taking responsibility for you, and it's going to be at the root of all good things to come, like for you and your future and growth and things like that, especially something like a marriage. Like you can't control anyone else, right? You got to own what your reactions are, the words coming out of your mouth, what you're contributing, the integrity of your effort, even, right? Like, are you really giving everything that you could be given to the marriage or partnership or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, yeah. We have all kinds of books. Yeah, we are big on the ownership and responsibility. Jocko, like Discipline Equals Freedom, Extreme Ownership, stuff like that. It's really funny because I read Extreme Ownership a couple years ago. I was like, hey, Melanie, check this book out. And it's all like Navy SEAL stuff, Army, everything. And it's really amazing hearing what she says about it. She's like, yeah, it's all like Navy SEAL dudes and like, guns and all this stuff. But she loved that book. And typically she's not into that kind of thing, but she was like, oh my gosh, this is so relevant to the marriage game, to the relationship game, that when we own our stuff in that way, boom, stuff changes exponentially, which is totally awesome.
Yeah, it's another, just the name drop things out there. So for that, like that book is what, Extreme Ownership, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Jocko's first book, Extreme Ownership, great book. Which gets into that. It is all about personal responsibility. Jocko's work, mine, Jordan Peterson, his books bring a lot of clarity. But even him, he talks about that nihilism attitude of, if you think it's everything else, right, that it's the world is against you. That's like the worst place you could ever be mentally, because there's literally nothing. If that's your take on life, like you're the victim here, you've done no wrong. The universe is out to punish you. You're never going to solve anything because you don't think you can. You're not taking any responsibility for your situation where you are, whatever that challenge or hardship
Right.
is.
Right. And that attitude, basically a victim mentality, that is so disempowering. If you're like, yeah, everything's against me, that saying, situations, if we can look at situations or issues, they happen for us, not to us, kind of thing, then what do we do there? We flip the power dynamic. Like, oh, I have control over this. It might be hard as hell because I have a deep hole to dig myself out of, but I do have control. I do have ownership. And I'll tell you, our marriage didn't change until both of us realized that.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we were both saying, oh, well, you always do this and you make me feel this way and I'm not happy. I'm not happy. Oh, I'm going to point my finger at you, kind of thing. But it was a real moment about 8 or 9 years ago. We're like, oh, wait a minute. What are we doing to contribute to this?
Sure.
Both our misery. What are we doing? And until that happened, it was not a good situation. But after that happened, we began this journey of like, oh, wait a minute, we can do this. We are doing this. Let's keep this going, which is really amazing. And we actually get to walk with couples as they discover that for themselves too. And it's a pretty amazing
That's
thing.
awesome. That is awesome. So let's set the stage a little bit more for you. Like, so what got you into this? Doing what you do today. How'd you get to this role?
Yeah. So right now, currently, we're a full-time podcast. We have 3 podcasts: Anatomy of Marriage, Anatomy of Sex, and Anatomy of Family. Right. And like I said, we lead with vulnerability and get other expert stories and bring them in as well. And now we also do high performance marriage coaching full time. I still do some mental health consulting on the side a little bit with a different agency that I work with. But the reason that we started this whole podcast, Anatomy of Marriage, and all the little affiliate things is because me and Melanie, like I said a minute ago, we did not have a good marriage. We were talking a little pre-show stuff about yeah, people on Facebook, they're putting out their best, and then you hear 2, 3, 4 weeks later, they're like, what? They're getting a divorce. What's going on, right? And we weren't that forward facing at the time. We are now. But I was a marriage and family therapist, and things at home were just no good. My wife
And when you
eventually gave
say,
me,
what do you mean by forward? When you say you weren't forward facing, you're saying you weren't you were hiding that there was issues, like you were keeping it
well,
concealed,
not
or
not so much hiding. We weren't as like out there on social media
okay, gotcha, yeah,
as we are now a couple years ago, right? So like forward facing stuff, it was still the same, but we weren't like trying to hide anything. But we're just like,
sure,
wait, something has to be different. And it came to a head a while back when Melanie literally gave me a black eye, right? And that's the whole story. It was like, okay, domestic violence is not cool, and we're not making fun of that, obviously. But we can look back and go, hey, that really changed a lot for the better in our marriage, right? It didn't happen to us; it happened for us, right? Literally gave me a black eye, and when you're a dude and you're sporting around a black eye of and you don't have a cool story behind it, like, yeah, this dude at a bar and stuff like this, or I had to fight off something. When your wife gives you a black eye, it's embarrassing, it's humiliating, and you say, oh shit, how in the world did I get here, right? So that was my moment. And I was a marriage and family therapist too. So we took that experience and said, okay, we really kicked our own asses, worked really hard, we have to share this stuff. So then we just been documenting the whole process. And I think the first episode released like 4 years ago. So we said, you know what? We made it through. Let's help people. Earlier you said, being a coach and like actually giving back and helping other people really feels good. It's like that Zig Ziglar quote, help enough people get what they want and you get what you want, right?
sure,
And
yeah,
one of the things that I like to say for what we do at Anatomy of Marriage is we want for your marriage what we want for our marriage. So what is that? Great relationships, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, spiritual intimacy, you guys both firing on all cylinders all the time and just loving life and loving each other. We want that for your relationship because that's what we want for our relationship, right? So we knew that we just had to give back and dive in and lead with vulnerability. And since then, we found that people have been really responsive to that. Like, oh, you're the first one talking about this stuff. I didn't know other people do this too. And you're like, yeah, let's talk about it. And then the growth that happens after that and the momentum that we see couples gaining. And it's just so rewarding and so awesome. I mean, we do speaking events too. And just like one of my, athletes talk about flow state, we're like,
mm-hmm.
yeah, time stopped and I'm just, in the zone or the zone of genius kind of thing. When Melanie and I are actually creating content together in any capacity, we do speaking engagements, and when we're on stage together, I look over at her and she's at the top of her game, right? And then I'm just like, it's such a flow state. It's like we're not even on stage. It's just a different world, and that is so awesome. Not only because it feels good to us, but we know that we're making a difference and helping too. And I'll tell you, it feels really good doing what you were meant to do, which is pretty awesome. So I know that
yeah.
was a long circular way to answer, like, oh, why do you do what you do? But that is definitely part of it for us.
Yeah, so can't help but dig into the story. So what happened? Like what was it sounds like a major tipping point,
Yeah,
You're walking around with a black eye, your wife gave it to you, like what the hell
yeah.
happened?
So okay, this was like remember I was saying awareness is curative. A lot of people
And I
just
guess
check
let's
out and
let's
go,
paint the stage. Like how long were you married? Maybe what was
okay,
what was going on? Like, what kind
yeah.
of led up to this?
Okay, so we were married about 5 years. We had our first son, and Melanie had just given birth to our second son, right? So she was literally like 2 weeks postpartum depression stuff.
Mm,
Guys, not a good time to drop a bomb on your wife, by the way, uh, kind of thing. But I'd been lying to her and saying, yeah, I've been checking out and looking at porn, And is that like the worst thing in the world? No, it's not. I mean, for some guys, for some relationships, that works and whatever. But for us, I was just lying to her, and being transparent, being honest is one of the most important aspects of a marriage. And we didn't have that, right? And that was illustrative of a bunch of other things going on in the marriage. We were both not very self aware. She was unhappy. I was unhappy. And we were just blaming each other, right? So this was the catalyst that brought it together. I was like, hey, look, I got to fess up. I've been lying to you and doing this, right?
So
And that's
she didn't think you were looking at porn, and you're
mhm.
like, hey, I'm looking at porn or
Right,
whatever,
right,
and that just
right. Yeah. And again, is that the biggest thing in the world? Did that warrant like a black eye and like living through hell for the next 2 years? No, it didn't. But there was some other like postpartum depression stuff going on, and it was really, really, really hard. And it was just crazy. We both said, okay, we want to kill each other. I want to kill myself. She was saying that. It was nuts, man. Just like a living hell for like a year and a half. But we got through it listening to podcasts, getting coaches, getting therapists, getting help, right? Because oftentimes we think we can do stuff alone, but if we could, we would have done it by now. And that was not our case. So we were like, okay, she wanted a divorce. I said, no, we're not going to get divorced over this. And it wasn't like a top down, my way or the highway kind of thing. I was like, no, I know that through hard work, and if we kick our own ass, and get our asses kicked by other people, coaches, therapists, and stuff, we can get through this. So, like, okay, we're going to get through this, right? So then, month after month, we were determined, going to therapy, doing counseling, all this stuff, and we got through it. So that was the story. We both didn't know our asses from a hole in the ground. That was the catalyst of stuff, and then just the bottom fell out. But we got through it. So that was the story leading up to it. But a lot of guys might be like, "What? You look at porn? Who cares? No big deal." But it was that paired with about 800 other things of you know emotional, dismissing her emotions. I was feeling dismissed. We weren't connected. It was like we bought into the myth of, okay, the Jerry Maguire, hey, you're going to complete me kind of thing stuff, which is not true, by the way. Of okay, we're married. Wait a minute, this sucks. You suck. I don't want to be with you. You're mean. You're this, whatever. But then we're like, oh, we're both being terrible in this, immature. We need to grow up, say, hey, what do we really want here, and get really decisive on what we want for ourselves, first of all, and then for our marriage, for our relationship, for our family, and then work towards that. And we just worked our asses off and did that. And now, you know, married almost 17 years coming up in August. We're in a
yeah,
really
yeah. So
different place.
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and that's it, right? Like you recognize that the only way through it is to put in the work, right? It
Right.
was not going to solve itself. It was not going to go away, you know. If and I honor the fact that you guys came together and made that commitment, right, to one
Mm-hmm.
another. Then it's almost what I'm hearing you saying. It's almost like almost a renewal of your commit. Like you got your marriage vows, obviously, and stuff like that in the beginning. But when you said that, I was like, wow, it's like you guys almost just renewed your vows to one another, saying, no, we're not getting divorced. We're going we're going to get through this, how we need to get
Yeah.
through this to be successful together. That's awesome.
Yeah. And the again, the turning point was not when we said, hey, I'm sorry, okay, I'll do better. It was I, as a man, as a husband, as a father, am choosing this. It was that aspect of extreme ownership and discipline equals freedom and all this stuff, taking full ownership and going, okay, what have I done to contribute to this? Seth, you're not happy, so you can control it. Go out there and do something about it, whether or not she does anything, right? Because oftentimes in marriages, one person will decide to change, and the wife or husband is like, "Oh, you're changing," blah blah blah, all this stuff, and then people get sidetracked, and then they just go back to their old ways, right? But we
Sure.
both found success of like, okay, I'm doing this with or without you, like being really disciplined on reading the books and being the man that I know that I should be and treating you right and unlearning a lot of bullshit from family of origin that I learned from my dad or from my mom. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm choosing to go this way, and I know that this is a good way. And again, it's not coming from a top down, my way or the highway kind of thing. It's, I know that this is the best thing for me, and I know that it will be good with this. I would like for you to join me. Thankfully, she did, and then we both kind of started that upward trajectory at the same time, which was really, really powerful. And we're like, man, we have to put this out there because if we could do it, literally anybody can do it. Can do it if they decide they're going to do it for themselves and go, okay, this is what I want. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it's people need the examples, right? And they need the examples from real people so that they can see like this is possible for me, right? You're living in the suck, your marriage is crap, whatever, you're feeling
Uh-huh.
the way you feel about it, and seeing these stories, from your show, and just kind of seeing, yeah, this can be fixed. This People have been in worse situations
Yeah.
but this is how they got through it and what they need to do. I wanted to call out a point that you made earlier. The compounding effect goes both ways, right? Like, so the compound effect of, like, if you're doing these little things, they add up to something big, right? So just something, you're losing weight. So if you just go work out 30 minutes a day and fix your diet, like, that'll add up to 15 pounds of lost weight, right? So the compounding effect of that 30-minute a day adds up to that.
Right.
But the same holds true to the compounding effect of the negative stuff, right? So you said it was the 800th thing that broke the bank, right? And it's like if you got capital built up in your relationship, but you're doing all these little negative things. You're making withdrawals. Okay, I'm taking more
Hmm.
out of it. I'm doing this, and then finally you go. In your case, you go to make a withdrawal one day about the porn. In your case, and there's no more in the bank.
Right.
Boom, there it is. It blew up. The compound effect in the reverse kind of caught up. So
Hmm.
something important to know, like the little things add up. It's not always I mean, you could have enough, relationship capital, so to speak, and one big thing happens and you get through it. It's not a catastrophic event because there was enough there. But when there's
Right.
no more left in the bank, and that might not be a $25 withdrawal, it might be a dollar withdrawal, and boom,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's the hit.
Dr. John and Julie Gottman, who are pioneers in the marriage space, they're out here in in Seattle. They've written tons of books on this, but they talk about a 5-to-1 ratio. Good relationships, successful relationships, have a 5-to-1 ratio of 5 good things, 5 deposits in the emotional bank account compared to 1 negative thing. And when we hit that, I mean, and they're all backed by science and research stuff. So when they say 5-to-1, it's literally 5 positive things to 1 thing. Good relationships can weather that 1 thing because, oh, guess what? Over the last week or month or even day, there's been 5 positive emotional deposits in that. And yeah, you're exactly right. I'm glad you pointed that out. We did not have that ratio. Probably it was 5-to-1 in the way that you don't want. It was 1-to-5, right?
Right.
And that one little thing just like boom, ripped the bottom out. But positive, healthy, rewarding relationships in all areas do have that 5-to-1 ratio. And the good thing about this is we have total control to have the ability to do the ratio that way, right? It can be hey, good morning, I got you coffee this morning, right? It's a positive thing. Hey, I put the toilet seat up or down. That's a positive thing, right?
Right.
Because what that does for your spouse is it lets them know, hey, this gal was thinking about me when I wasn't around,
Yep.
right? Or Melanie knows that, like, I like shoulder rubs or something like that. Okay, come home, touch me on the shoulder. That's a 5-to-1 ratio, right?
Yeah.
So we can weather that other stuff. So yeah, I'm super glad you pointed that out. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think another thing you mentioned I wanted to hit on, from your profession and mental health. Like, let's talk a little bit about depression for a minute, right? What is depression? Like, how do it? Because I've had my own experience with it. It's a dark, dark place. But
Yeah.
I want to get your take on, like, what is it, and when would someone know, like, they're actually up against that? Because if you've not been through it, or you're in this cloud, like, so talk to me a little bit about just depression, what it is, how
Yeah.
you're there, et cetera.
So clinically, and this may not be verbatim from the DSM or other classification things where we diagnose folks, but depression. Um, I know if someone is depressed, if I ask them, a battery of questions, and I'll try to remember some of them. One is like, okay, do you get less pleasure from doing things now that you used to like to do? Oh, I had these hobbies. I look forward to, I don't know, go dirt bike racing or hunting or, spending time with my kids or something. I just don't care about those anymore. So less interest in things that you used to like. If you're sleeping way more, if you're gaining weight, if you're not interested in sex, like less sexual feelings, you feel down all the time, like maybe you're crying more easily. You just kind of don't care about things. You're apathetic. You're like, yeah, I could go there, but what does it even matter, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I describe depression as, illustrate depressive feelings as, say that I'm somewhere in, I don't know, Kansas, somewhere really flat or something, out in a big field, and I'm just sitting there. It's a sunny day. I see this gray cloud off in the horizon. It's coming. It's coming. I can feel it. I'm like, oh, what is that? What is that? Then it's right on top of me, right? And you're in that dark place. You're like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't care about anything. Don't mess with me, whatever. And then sometimes you feel it go away. Like, okay, well, I don't feel so crappy now. But yeah, but depression happens when that dark cloud is mostly around you, right? When it's either right on top of you, and you're just really in it, or when like most of your outlook or most of what you see above you is just that dark gray sky kind of thing, right? So that's how, and again, that's not verbatim, but that's just a very kind of anecdotal examples of what depression is. It's most people experience depression because it's a biological issue, right? It's less, happy chemicals,
Serotonin,
dopamine,
right? Yeah.
serotonin, stuff like that. Sometimes people experience depression after something like a major event. Of course, after grief and loss, depression is somewhat natural. After a major transition in life, which can also include anxiety and depression. Like I left my full time agency work during COVID, by the way, to dive into high performance marriage coaching full time. And honestly, I did experience, I say, some healthy anxiety, not so much depression, really, because it was more of like, okay, we really did this. This was totally volunteer, we did this, but there was some anxiety and then maybe a little bit of depression about, did we make the right thing? What kind of man am I? What am I doing? Did I make a wrong choice? Do I have kids? What the hell am I thinking, kind of thing? But I want to put it in context of, what if we looked at depression just like any other illness, like, cancer or diabetes or something like that. But as a mental health and a marriage and family therapist, I see this often. People, especially men, us dudes, we want to white knuckle everything, right? And just kind of beat our way through it. But if we looked at depression or other mental illness as like, oh shit, I fell and broke my leg, I need to go to the ER. I need to go get care. I need to go to physical therapy after that. And reframing in our minds of like, man, I'm thinking things that I didn't really think a year ago. Okay, what's going on? Let me get some help around that. Let me shed some light on this and get some education. Awareness is curative, right? So if I
Yeah.
know I'm feeling like, God, I haven't felt like this before, let me go talk to somebody about it. And for guys, and for women too, but for guys, that's an actual testament and a show of strength, right? Like if I can't lift something really heavy, I can either try for 2 hours and throw my back out, or call my neighbor buddy and say, dude, can you come over and help me with this thing? It doesn't mean I'm a wuss or I can't do it or can't figure it out. Like, oh, I just manage my time and my resources a lot more wisely, but just asking my neighbor guy to come over, hey, we pick up this thing. All right, we did it together. Let's look at depression and mental health issues that way. Go talk to a therapist. It's fine, right? Strong guys,
Yep.
all the strong coaches that I know and strong dudes that I know, um, are open to that and go, yeah, I had to go get my head right? I was just feeling anxiety or, this things I haven't felt before, went and talked to somebody and got some good education around that. And was like, oh, okay. I feel a lot better.
Yeah, and to your point about the awareness being a cure, like if you're aware that serotonin is a thing, your brain needs serotonin to get you those happy feelings, whatever. And I'm no ist, and by none of this is any advice. This is just my experience. So, I carry no credentials in this, but and back to even Jordan Peterson, he brought clarity to this for me at one point about depression versus having real problems. And I think he made the point, and maybe it was one of his podcasts or lectures or whatever, he had said like depression, like if you've got a challenge, like you said, if you just had a big major loss in your life, like that's natural. You're going to feel anxiety. You're going to feel the pain of the loss and whatever. And you can get through that. You may not necessarily be depressed if it's an event. It's a challenging event in time. But what rung out to me is he said, but if you have everything's going good for you, but you're still in that cloud, in that dark place, you're depressed. Like that's because that was a big tell. Like, when I went through it, it was, I didn't have everything was going great, but like you said, and I don't talk to many people about this, but you talk about the vulnerability stuff. I'll tell you, man, I had points for no good reason, but I would be like crying in the shower. No
Mm,
idea why. No,
yeah.
I didn't have any problem. It wasn't like this big thing was killing me, but I did talk to a doc about it at one point. But what I realized, like I had changed my diet, and it affected me biologically. And it wasn't until that all clicked that I actually got back in it. And I intermittent fast. I've intermittent fast for years. And long story short, I went off intermittent fasting. Man, on Netflix they had this. Man, it was a documentary about eating greens. It was oh, I don't know if you ever saw it,
Well,
but there was this
was it the smoothie dude, that one, or different one?
no, it was the one about going all vegan, and it had all these athletes on it that they just ate a vegan diet, and it talked about like how much it made their performance. So I was like,
Oh,
cool, I'll
yes. I
try.
know what you're talking about. Yep. The
What
bodybuilder guy, and he's huge. Yeah.
all of that, yeah, right. I forget what that was called. It was the Game Changers, the Game
Hmm.
Changer.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I watched that, and I'm like, all right, yeah, I could use some more energy in my life. I could use that. So I switched my diet up. I've been on intermittent fasting for years. Whereas intermittent fasting for me, I would eat from noon to 8 p.m. and then I would go off, no eat. And again, I'm not a ist in anything, but what I had read was your body, when it's burning normal food fuel, it's not as efficient. If it's burning body fat, it's like burning rocket fuel. And after 12 hours, you go into a fasted state, and now you're burning body fat. So you're burning body fat naturally, but it's a better energy fuel for you. And that to me was working. And I was like, well, let me try this vegan stuff. And man, it sent me down in a big
Really?
way, and I didn't know. Right, it was crazy. And
Yeah.
to round the story out, so I was like depressed. I had no idea why. I mean, and I'm talking crazy stuff, and no one at the time, no one would have known. No one would have known. This was all in my head, in my private space, But like I said, I'd be crying in the shower, no idea why. Just no idea why. I got a Peloton. I'd be on my Peloton, freaking crying. I'd be telling myself I'm letting everyone down. And there's no truth to like any reasons, right? There was no event that someone said, "Yeah, you're letting me down," or "You're doing," like it was just in my head. And one day, finally, I think my wife checked me. We were coming back from dinner, and we were coming back from lunch one day, driving. I was driving, and I said, "Can we pull over?" We were coming down the highway. I'm like, "Can we pull over?" And she's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I need you to drive." And so we get out, and I'm like, I start bawling, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I have no idea." And it's like,
Yeah.
and that's when I was like, okay, something's going on. The funny thing was how this rounded out was, so I was still doing that stupid diet. I hadn't
Hmm.
gotten back to it. And one day I literally had come down from crying on a Peloton, was getting ready to get into the shower, and my iWatch sends like, has those news alerts. This
Yeah.
news alert pops up and says, "Doctors say intermittent fasting, blah, blah, blah." And I said, I have not been intermittent fasting. And in fact, I've felt this way since I stopped doing that. I
Ah.
switched back to it and went right back to normal. It's crazy. And that's just me.
Yeah.
Like, but that's the
And then,
biology
yeah,
of it.
the
Yeah.
biology. So yeah, people don't think about it, but we have training in this. Your biology affects everything else you're doing, right? I approach things from we call it a biopsychosocial spiritual model, right? Our biology influences every aspect of that. Our emotional aspects, spiritual, right? I mean, I'm not talking about like, oh, some religion or anything, but just your spirituality, who you are as a person. And then biopsychosocial, and social, our friends. Each one of those four quadrants impact the other ones. So your biology got way off,
Yeah.
right? And what did that impact? Everything else, especially social emotional. You were crying, you're social, I don't know if your social life suffered or whatnot, but it probably did with your wife. Like, what is this? What's going on? That
Yeah.
impacted things, right? Tell me, I'm really curious about, maybe this is just my own kind of thing, but I've done intermittent fasting a little bit, but can you, so 12 to 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
12 p.m. to 8 p.m. That was your feeding window, I
That's
guess
what
is
I
what
do.
they
Yeah.
call it, right?
Yep.
And so when you went back on that, how did you feel? Was it like a day and night kind of thing, or did you get back on rhythm
Within
quickly, or
days.
what? Really?
Within days, I was back. And like I say, that's like the depression, and it's one of those things like I just could tell. And I'll use your analogy. The cloud was gone, but during that time, and that's where, being in a depressive state like that, it's one of those things I wouldn't wish on anyone, and two, again, I was hiding it damn well. I'm running a company. It's got 200 people. Like, I can't be showing that, right? And like I
Right.
say, everything was going great. We're going gangbusters, finance, everything was great. No problems at home. Everything was great. But it was that saying, like, back to what I heard Jordan Peterson say, like, if you're feeling that way and there's no real significant event or something going on that you can point to,
Uh-huh.
like, it's biological.
Yeah.
And then I've talked to some other friends, and I probably should do some more research into it. In fact, I've got a podcast episode coming up. I've got a guy that's a doctor that specializes in intermittent fasting that I'm kind of
Nice.
dig into a little bit more, like what's happening. But some light research, I did see some articles that talked about, the serotonin levels and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
obviously it's one of those things, unless it's going to yield some pharmaceutical, there's not a lot of research out on natural ways to heal ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to find
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
who's invested time and research into something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the case.
Yeah.
It was
So
crazy.
another thing about depression and also anxiety, if you find yourself feeling like this more often than not, and like you said, nothing else significant in therapy, we call it a nodal event. If there's no other nodal events that we can point back to, like, okay, there's a divorce, there's death and grief and loss, job loss kind of thing. If we can't point back to something like that, and you're just feeling this way more days than not, then that is something to go like, wait a minute, okay, this is something. Let's go check it out. Let's don't shy away from it. Let's really lean into it. And for anxiety, it's crazy how many people have depression and anxiety, but they just think, oh, well, I'm just stressed. I'm just pushing, I'm just doing my thing, right? But like sometimes us doing our thing doesn't work. And just recently, right? Again, we're talking about vulnerability stuff. Sometimes going on vacation can be more stressful, especially when it's family and stuff like that. Can be more stressful than just like staying at home and doing your own thing, right? It's like we came back from vacation. I'm like, I need a vacation from the vacation, and there were like 2 weeks when I was just really, and this was recent, like a couple of weeks ago, just feeling I can't relax. I can't just turn my brain off. It's like the feeling of not being able to concentrate. Like one of the signs of having generalized anxiety disorder is feeling keyed up or on edge. Like you drank too much caffeine or something like that,
Mhm.
or not having the ability to focus or concentrate on seemingly easy things. And then a third one is just being irritable,
Yeah.
like just feeling like I don't know, he's cranky. What's the deal? So I always like to lean into those and go, okay, you're feeling this way. Maybe it is anxiety. Let's slow down. Try some Wim Hof breathing or something. Do a cold dip or whatever. Exercise, right? Diet and exercise is one of the main components to change our health. Obviously, to change our physical health, but also to change our social and emotional and mental health. Is like, okay, uh, what are you eating? How much are you moving? Because our body creates those own. You create your
Yep.
own dopamine. You get your runner's high or whatever you call it.
Yep.
In those things. But just being having the awareness to slow down and take a minute and go, oh, okay, is it something different? Because especially guys, we use the excuse of like, well, we just got to get this done, and I'm just churning and burning and grinding and all this stuff. That's great. I love that stuff, right? But if that's all you're doing, then you're going to run the wheels off of that thing sooner than later. And you're going to be like, oh man, I should have slowed
Yeah.
down earlier.
You can't run the car at red line nonstop.
Right.
Like, you got to
Right.
stop. You got to take it off the red. You got to change the oil. You got to
Mm-hmm.
re-energize. So,
Absolutely.
jumping back into marriages, what are some of the more common things you see in challenges, issues you see in marriages? Through your experience, what's the typical stuff that you see going on, people doing wrong?
Yeah. I would say most of our clients who come to us needing help And most of the folks that write in or DM on Instagram or whatnot, they talk about we aren't feeling emotionally connected, right? And our communication sucks, right? So communication and just like, I want to be close to this person physically, intimately, spiritually, emotionally, but there's just blocks, you know? He does this that turns me off, or like he never listens, or like she just complains all the time, or just nags, nags, nags. Um, it's really figuring out those things. And so, what do you do? What do you suspect if you're laying in bed and the smoke alarm goes off? What do you just instantly suspect? Oh,
There's fire.
there might be a fire, right? Or a dead battery, right? One of the two. So I like to look at these things as looking at it from a marriage perspective, and like, oh, our communication sucks, or he never listens, or all she does is complain. Those are signs that you guys need to stop what you're doing, right? Tony Robbins talks about take massive action, right? Stop what you're doing, because we're really good at just perpetuating the same cycle of arguing over and over and over, and go, hey, what is the thing below the thing below the thing? And oftentimes we're either scared or fearful or like hurt, right? And I think there's another one that I'm not thinking of it right now. But when we are willing to go below those things, it's like, oh, that thing that I said hurt your feelings. Okay, I wasn't trying to be a douchebag about it, and you're not just a whiny baby about it. That actually hurt your feelings because maybe it reminded you of something that you got teased about in high school or something like that, right? I said something that triggered an old injury, and you responded with defense around that. But is that what we're talking about? No, you're complaining that I left my socks on the floor for the 18th time or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's the ability to slow down and go, what is the thing below the thing below the thing? I was on a potential client call yesterday, and it's like, you guys did not get married to get divorced, right? Nobody thinks that, on their wedding day or whatever, if you're at a church or a park or the courthouse or whatever, when you get married, you're not thinking about, oh, that super shitty time 5 years from now where I hate you and we get divorced. No, you don't think about that. But those things creep up when we're not intentional about our communication and all this stuff. And so the other thing that I know I'm going all over the place here, but back to communication and looking for the thing below the thing below the thing, when we're able to look at those things and then pair those with, hey, husband, what are you doing to contribute to this problem? Well, if she wouldn't do that, then I wouldn't have to say that. No, that's bullshit. What are you doing that is contributing to this problem? And we really get deep into that. Oh,
Yep.
well, I don't listen and I dismiss her emotionally and I'm kind of selfish and this, and this. And then we get into the reasons why he may feel that way, which always comes from family of origin or some other injury that we have. And I'm not doing therapy with our coaching clients. We're being emotionally available to talk to them about these real things and then go, all right, we've uncovered it. I'm going to kick your ass in a nice way around that and hold you accountable to that. Oftentimes there's a lot of pushback, right? Because people don't like to change. Being uncomfortable is not something that we like. But we push back and go, hey, you said you wanted this. This is the reason. I'm here to remind you and also encourage you because I felt exactly like you felt. I felt that way before. And here's the way out, right? So that's what we do with coaching. But again, circling it back around to communication, owning our own stuff, and then being willing to go, oh, the thing below the thing below the thing. Okay. She reacts this way because she feels like she has to defend herself because you don't listen to her, kind of thing. And then we have conversations about that. And that really opens up stuff. And then couples slowly go, oh, that felt good. Oh, that was an emotional deposit, right? That 5-to-1 thing we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And then I think Garrett White talks about stacking. It's basically habit building. It's like, okay, I'm going to wake up. I want to wake up at 5 a.m. and start getting up at 5:45. A week from now, start getting up at 5:30, 5:15, and then it gets easier and you stack and then you finally get to your goal, right?
Right.
So that's one of the approaches that we take with marriage and relationships. Okay, we're going to change this behavior, modify it to this, and then eventually, oh, this is how we act. This is how we talk. This is how we communicate. And this is how we treat each other in the relationship. And that's where the real change happens.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that you called out coaching because I've come to understand, and you're in a really unique position, I think, to serve your clients in this way, right? Because I've always looked at like therapy is looking back and unpacking, what's happened in the past and getting that awareness, that understanding of why we're here. But coaching, the power of coaching, it's future oriented, right? We're looking to where are we going? I'm going to coach you to where do you need to go? Where do you want to go? Where do you have to go? And I think that's awesome because I think you're in a really good spot, right? To be both, right? Like let's unpack it. Let's figure it out while we're here, so we're all on the same page, and
Mhm.
then let's talk it. Let's get you where you want to go. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really
I
cool.
love that you said that because one of the questions that we get is, hey, what's the difference between therapy and coaching? And you said it perfectly. One of the analogies that we also give is, okay, therapy is if, say, you're a cross country runner or something, right? You fall, you break your leg, right? You go to therapy to get healing from the past, right?
Mm.
Then okay, get all healed up, get mended up, be on the up and up. Then like physical therapy even. Then you go to a coach to say, all right, coach, I'm all healed up. This stuff in the past, we literally got it taken care of. Now I'm training to run the fastest, 500 meter or, cross country, 5K or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
So that's the
yeah.
difference between therapy and coaching.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I like that because I'm gonna steal that one from you because it's a good. I love the
Mhm.
analogy. That's cool. So what you talked about, the way you've been serving clients, like what's you know maybe your biggest success story or maybe a client success story that you're most proud of.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of them, right? We've had a lot of clients over the years, and we have the range of clients from, hey, we literally have the divorce papers here on our desk. This is our last ditch effort, so they come to
Yeah,
us. To clients who are killing it, right? They're entrepreneurs, they're really growth mindset, and they say, yeah, we know that coaching, having another set of eyes, is good for us, so we're going to do it, and level up. And some of those guys, it's really cool because we uncover stuff like I didn't even know things are good, but I didn't know that upper limit problem was impacting how I'm showing up for marriage. You know,
mm,
okay, we figured that out, right? Let's go. Let's get some encouragement around that. Two, the converse of that, like, yeah, the divorce papers are here. This is our last ditch effort. Like, okay, how are you showing up, man, dude? How are you showing up, woman? Like, oh, I've never even thought about that. And then they really start to uncover, like, we've gone 20 years thinking the same thing, and we had no idea that this way of thinking was contributing to this. It wasn't that he was just a douchebag and she's just crazy over here. It was the culmination of like we're both bringing this thing, contributing to this, but we think that the terrible situation, the way that we're experiencing marriage right here, is all because of him, all because of her. And then so we shed light and increase awareness to where like, oh wow. So this one particular couple, in fact, is like, nah, we're not getting divorced, kind of thing. And that was only after
yeah.
like 45 days of coaching. It was like, okay, let's keep this momentum up, and it's just really awesome. And coaches, typically we do 90-day spurts of coaching. I don't want to see so problems don't happen in less than 90 days, when you've been married for 10 years or whatever, it's like, okay, this didn't take 90 days to create. Let's be reasonable and not expect it to have to change in like 7 days or 3 weeks or something like that. Right. So we don't coach folks under 90 days.
Sure. Yeah.
And one of the things I was going to say is it usually goes like this, like, okay, somebody's, they're like, okay, let's take this island. We're going to burn the boats. They make the financial commitment, all this stuff to coaching. So there's like a high, like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Right. First session goes great. Second, we're getting into stuff. And around the 3 to 4 week mark is like, oh, now we're getting into some real stuff. Right. So that's when the pushback really happens. Like, I didn't know coaching would be like this. This is uncomfortable. This is a laser beam focus on me. This feels terrible. And, sometimes we get pushback, but our job as a coach is like, no, we're pushing through this, right? And then there's breakthroughs, after like 5, 6 or so weeks, big breakthroughs, like, okay, this is our new normal. And then another kind of downswing of like, oh, he did it again, or she's saying this stuff again. We're like, yeah, I know. This is how it goes. But this is where the rubber meets the road. The only way out is through, and we're going to stay here. And that's where the coaching magic happens. Like, oh shit, hey Seth, can we jump on a call real quick? Yeah, let's walk through this, man. Let's do this. And then the ladies are talking to Melanie all the time. We use Voxer app and stuff like that. And it's that encouragement and that really high accountability level. It's like, yeah, I know this, but remember 2 weeks ago when all was great and you guys made a huge breakthrough? Yeah, you can do it. And one thing that I like to remind myself of this, if I've done anything in my life, and I'd like to know what you think about this. I haven't talked to many people about it. I just say it all the time on the show. If I've done anything in my life, like super hard, like dug deep and reached that goal and just like, oh man, I killed it. I did it. Or I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? That was so stupid. That was selfish. That was terrible of me, right? If I've done anything before in my life, I have the capability, the capacity to do it again, barring some physical, injury or emotional mental health thing, right? Like, I like to remind myself on this because I run hills. We have beautiful property out here, and there's a circuit that I do. It's about 2 miles long, and there's really sloping hills, right? And I run the whole thing just flat out. Sometimes I don't want to do it, at 5:30 in the morning, right? But I've done it so many times that when I say, "Oh no, I don't want to do it," I say, "Seth, F that. You've done it. You can do it again. Shut up and do it," right?
Yeah.
So that's what I say to couples. Like, okay, no, Joe and Sue, you've done this before. You're going to do it again. I'm going to remind you of that. I'm going to walk through it with you. I'm going to coach you through it, and I'm not going to accept anything less because that's not where we're at right now. You have done it before. You can do it again. So I'm going to circle back. What do you think about that? Are we capable as humans? I mean, you're a coach. You've done a million things that are awesome. Are we capable of, if we've set the bar here before, are we always able to go back? I mean, of course, barring crazy circumstances, are we always able to go back to do that goal again, you think?
Well, look, I think from the marriage perspective, I'm going to rephrase kind of how I'm hearing you say that, which is, from a coach, when you look at these situations, I feel what you're saying is like, hey, we've been here before. We're here again, but we're smarter now. We're going to deal with this better this time, right? So that event that's happening, like you're saying, like, oh, he did it again, right? Like, okay, but we know now, like, we know that how we've addressed him doing this in the past has not worked. How are we going to deal with it now, right? So I feel like there's that progression of awareness again, to be better the next time. Like, I've done this before, I can do it again, but having done it before, I can do it better now, right? I can be,
Mm-hmm.
To your point about just generally from a performance perspective, I find myself looking at a lot of things like that. I think a physical challenge, since you went there. I did Goggins 4x4x48 this year. You run
Oh
4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours.
it's
And
crazy.
how I got through that mentally was I just kept saying, I already ran 4 miles. I just need to run 4 more miles. And when I got to the halfway point at 24 miles, I said, I've already run 24 miles. I can run 24 miles. Now I just need to run 24 more miles, right? Like, I just kept the bites small, going, well, this is just 4 miles. I've run 4 miles a million times. It's only 4 miles. Like, don't look at the forest, focus on that tree in front of you, so to speak, in that regard, and just get through that. I got through Marine Corps boot camp like that, to be honest with you. I just said, one more day, just one more day, just get through another day. Every night when I got in the rack, I was on the bottom rack and I could still see it. I was looking up at the bunk above me going, one more day down, one more day to go. And just,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
got through it that way. So yeah. I think I think it's also a great tool for anyone to give yourself that acknowledgement, like, hey, I've done this before. That was me. I did that, and I can do it again if I'm doing the right things that allow me to do it, right? Because it's like, if you run a marathon and you train 16 weeks to do it, and you ran a 3 hour 30-minute run, and then you sign up for another one, but you don't do any training and show up, like, you can expect you're probably going to have a hard time with that, right? So
Oh
there is a
yeah. Yeah.
perspective, like, yeah, I've done that before. I can do it again, so long as I do what it took to do it then, but
Right.
maybe do that better, right? So yeah, I'm with
Exactly.
you. I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
powerful stuff for sure.
And I think that it also keeps me. This, I guess, maybe doesn't sound humble, but it keeps me honest in that. Like, hey, Seth, that douchebag thing that you did, you always have the capability to do that again if you let yourself slide in this way and this way or this way, right? Kind of thing. So
Yep.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Okay, so what do I need to do to keep myself on my toes in that way? Because I didn't like that guy. I didn't like that guy a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Okay, what are you going to do to not be that? You have the capability to get back there again. What are you going to do to keep yourself aware and to keep yourself disciplined not to go back there again? So it can go. Does that make sense?
I talk about that in the form of, well, look, number one, everyone needs to know there's a monster in us. So like we can be a lot of great things and we can be a lot of evil things too. Like never forget there's a monster in you. I mean, we've seen enough evil in this world, especially in our lifetime, seeing the human potential for evil, right? Like in our lifetime, let alone like the Holocaust and all the other craziness
Oh,
that's happened,
yeah,
but so you got to know that can be there, and you've got to consciously choose. It goes that old Indian story, and I'm sure you know in your area, like the two wolves fighting, internally, which one wins? The one that you feed, right? Like
right.
you feed that white wolf, the one that is the good virtues, the progressive goals, and you're feeding that one, and you don't feed the negative one. But it's
Mm,
there, you've and
yeah,
I'll say a lot of the stuff that I do today from a performance perspective, shout out to Jay Tiggs, who is another high performance coach. We've talked about this. Like he and I are on the same page with like a lot of the things I'm doing today, like pushing myself from a performance perspective is to keep the monster at bay. Cause like, you know what I mean? Like you got to keep pushing yourself in that forward direction,
right,
I talk when I teach about necessity, there's two forms, like, necessity to earn a goal. Like, why do you need this goal? How's it going to change your life? What's the necessity to go get this? Another way to look at it, to your point, I believe, is what happens if I don't start going towards that goal, right? If I don't do what I need to start doing there, or maybe I do worse, I start doing the opposite. What does that future look like, right?
right,
What's my ideal future I want, and what's the future I'm trying to avoid, right? So it is a good awareness to have, right? Especially to know what you're running towards, but just as importantly, know what you're running from. That
right.
that
It really creates a stark perspective. Like with potential client calls, I'm like, okay, what happens if you don't do coaching?
yeah,
What do you do if you and your wife, you and your husband get off of this discovery call right now and you don't do anything? And oftentimes they know exactly what's going to happen. Well, we just have a terrible marriage, or we get divorced, or we just keep on struggling this way. I'm mad
yeah,
at her, she's
yeah.
mad at me. Sucks, right? And sadly, there are a number of folks are like, yeah, I don't know, we can't do it.
I mean,
Okay,
I
say
imagine,
hello, say yeah,
I'm going to give you a sales tactic that just came to me. Like, I imagine you could simply, and maybe you do say, like, the cost of coaching is going to be way less expensive than the divorce lawyer fees.
yeah, yeah. It
I mean,
is.
am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think what's the average? I don't know, average U.S. divorce. I mean, in certain cases, I think it's the average. So I think it's around 20 or 25,000 or something
Right.
like
Yeah.
that, right? And with us, 90 days, it's less than that. I mean, some coaches are 100K a year and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like right in the moment, I'd rather spend the smaller side of five figures for marriage coaching than like 20, 25, $30,000, especially just kids. Like I've had therapy clients who have gotten divorced, and come to me and they just couldn't work it out, and they're like, this is the most terrible thing that has ever happened. It sucks in all areas. I know it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And it's just crazy. So I'd rather be uncomfortable. Wisdom does now. We're going to be thankful for later, right? And the
Yeah.
times we've done therapy, the times we've done coaching, I'm like, whatever the price tag on that was, I'd have paid it, 3, 4, 5 times over, because the results are something that I can't see myself living without. And folks
Yeah.
who gain that perspective really benefit from it.
Yeah. 100%. Another thing I wanted to get your perspective on, talk to me about the importance of trust and honesty in a relationship, right? Like, just let's be real talk here. You've got to be all in. Like, you've got to have a trusted partner, like, without question, right? The integrity of the relationship's got to be there, right?
Right. Absolutely. So trust and honesty is the foundation of every relationship, romantic or not, right? Like, even with you and I, okay, yeah, let's do a podcast. I trust you'll show up on time. You trust that I show up on time, and we're making something work, right? And so think about it this way. And this is something that people do not think about. Nobody thinks about this. So in your house, you don't even think about the roof trusses in most cases, right? Unless a hurricane comes through, you're like, okay, I hope the roof stays on this thing or whatever. But on the daily, you're not thinking about the floor joists or the roof trusses, right? I'm not
Right.
thinking, so in our studio here, I'm not thinking about, are these walls going to stand up? Is this, leaky, rainproof or whatever? I'm not thinking about that. Because if I was, then I wouldn't be able to be present with you here, right? We've all
Sure.
been in sketchy situations. Like, I know that, you're a vet and you've served stuff. You've been in situations, and even if you're not a vet or whatever, I mean, not you, I know you are, but for other people, you've been in situations where, oh, thinking deeply and contemplating something really serious here is not the first thing on my mind, because I am concerned with food safety, water, and shelter right now, right? So
Yeah.
think about it this way. If your relationship, if you can't count on the house of your relationship having sturdy trusses, then you're not going to be able to show up in any other ways, emotionally, physically, romantically, because you're thinking about some sort of survival or something. So this happens a lot in infidelity and lying and cheating around, is when a partner doesn't trust, like, okay, somebody cheated, they stepped out, they blew it. It takes a long, long, long minute for me, whoever it was, if it was a male or female who was betrayed, to build up that emotional courage and that emotional vulnerability to be able to share something with you. Because I don't know if this roof is, I'm not going to think about it here. I'm not going to sleep in an old rickety roof because, at 2 a.m., it's, a gust of wind might come through and these trusses are going to fall down and kill me and my kids. I'm not going to be able
Right.
to go sleep in that, right? So
Sure.
that is one aspect of why trust is so vitally important. And trust, so we've all seen, construction bridges going up, right? No matter where we live in, wherever. A construction project starts, it takes a long time to build like some overpass on a freeway, right? A year,
Yeah.
2, 3 years sometimes. And you say, man, they're taking a really long time, but you're seeing the concrete pillars being poured, the trusses, the rebar, all this stuff. It takes a long time to build something strong that can withstand semi trucks going on at 24/7, trains, whatever, cars, people. It takes a long time, right? It takes an instant for trust to be broken. Like, think about it in a bridge or something like that. An earthquake, a tsunami, boom, falls down, right? So in the relationship world, trust takes a long time to be broken. I mean, to be cultivated. It has to be worked on. You have to be intentional about it. And then just know that you can break trust in an instant. So with couples who have had infidelity or stuff like that, it's like, slow this whole thing down, man or lady. You cannot for 1 second expect that bridge that just got crushed to be built back up in 1 week, two
Sure.
weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I heard this teaching a long time ago on trust and honesty. It's like, so you ever walked into a room or gone to a restaurant or a bar or something like that, and you're like, all right, this is jamming. This is, let's have some fun. There's people, the band is playing or whatever. It's like an energy that's different, like,
Yeah.
okay, it's like having a great team meeting. You're like, man, people, we were just up on here, right? So there's an energy, there's an actual real energy to that, right? And on the
Mhm.
converse, we've all walked into a room and gone, whoa, who just died? Is this a funeral or a birthday party? You know what I'm saying? It just
Right.
feels like heavy and just like, ah. So I can't remember what book it was, but it talked about honesty as having an energy, like in a especially in a romantic relationship. Like, if you're withholding something from your partner, like, if it could be money, you got a bank account they don't know about, or they've asked you this and you didn't want to hurt their feelings, so you lied about it, or you're doing something sketchy. That is an energy, and it it is, here's what it does. That energy inhibits you from feeling the fullness of connection with your wife, with your husband, or whoever
Sure.
you're romantically involved in, right? So when you do talking about trust and honesty, it's like, yeah, okay, let's use those analogies that I use for trust, and then understand that, oh well, she doesn't need to know about this, it's no big deal, or I just keep this from him, kind of thing. There is no way that you are going to get what you actually want out of that relationship, like real emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, spiritual intimacy, even with, your life partner, whatever you want to call it, because that energy is taking up room, and it's not. It's like, this. If you have something here and try to put something else in there, there's already a space occupied for that, right? So
Sure.
until
Yeah.
this is removed, talked about, processed, shed some light on, this other thing cannot be put in that place. It just can't, right? Even
Yeah.
physically. So honesty is so important. And going back to like our story about the black eye and stuff, I wasn't being honest with Melanie, and that was one of the things that was keeping us from really experiencing one another in a way that we both wanted to experience, because something else was taking up the space, so it
Yeah.
couldn't, right? So we felt the incongruency there of like, oh, what is this? Oh, be honest about stuff, and things will change,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
When you were
love that you
telling
brought
that
that up.
story, yeah, when you were telling that story about, I mean, it takes a lot of energy to maintain the lie, number one. But when you're telling that, I was kind of imagining, like, check this out. It's like if you're going through the field of life, right, with your partner, and it's sunny day and you're skipping through the field, right? If you tell a lie, it's almost like you've just planted a minefield in front of you, right?
Right,
You can't just skip through that field all happy anymore, because now you got to maintain the lie. Like you've been dishonest, and now you've now, to your point, you can't give yourself fully to the connection, because now you've got to be aware to maintain the lie. Does that make
right.
sense? Like you've
Absolutely. You
yeah,
can't fully engage of like, hey, let's just run and skip anywhere, because you're thinking, oh shit, if I step there, we're both going to blow up, kind of thing. So part of your emotional energy
yeah,
is going towards that. And if a resource, which, energy in your mind is an emotional resource, if it's going towards that, it can't be directed over here to what you really want, right? I
yeah,
mean, well,
or what you need.
until
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Until you shed some light on that stuff, and you're like, okay, I don't want to carry that energy around anymore. I'm gonna let it go. Say what's going on or whatnot. Then you can start the process of really creating that relationship that you want.
yeah, 100%. Another thing I wanted to get your perspective on is, this hierarchy in a relationship, right? Like, how does it need to be? Like what's the hierarchy of a good marriage? Tell me if I'm not making sense, but
No, no, that makes sense. I think that oftentimes, so we talk a lot about family of origin, and we usually model, and so I'm going to talk about this in context of just Western culture, USA, right? Because we're obviously both in the United States.
yeah,
Um, Culturally, it has been like, okay, the guy's the leader. This is, yeah, this is what we do. He's the main breadwinner, all this stuff, right? And that has really caused some negative things of like, whoa, you're not letting somebody else like live up to their full potential, right? In whatever context it is. And I think that notion of hierarchy in that degree has been really misused, and we've missed out on a lot of things, right? And me and Melanie had to really think about that, and talk about that, and just come to the conclusion of like, okay, what are you better at in this marriage or just in life, and what am I better at, right? And sometimes those things can change. They fluctuate, right? For an example,
sure,
like I can cook 100 times better than Melanie, and she knows that I say that, so I'm not talking trash on her or anything like that. But that's kind of atypical, right? Like, oh, the woman cooks and stays on all this stuff. So I can cook better, right? And she is a boss with power tools, right? I mean, DeWalt table saws, skill saws, tearing it up, making stuff, fences, tables, all this stuff. And that is, I mean, I'm good at that stuff too, but she's just as good at it. So, like, yeah, go ahead, right? So there's no like real hierarchy in that,
yeah,
and we just do what we're both better at, right?
yeah,
And I like to, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but I'm a hunter and do a lot of stuff outdoors, right? and I look to
Yeah.
nature and elk and deer, because we have those all over the property here. I like to look to nature to see what they're doing and then glean wisdom from that, right? So from the biological point of view, like, okay, so like I said, this is funny. So last night, it was like 3:30 a.m. Our dogs were barking like crazy, right? And there was a coyote in our backyard about, I don't know, 50 feet from the house, and our dog just had puppies. So I'm thinking that coyote's got some eye on the puppies, but they're in a fence, right? So who got up in the middle of the night, barefoot, and literally chase the coyote away? I did. Is Melanie going to do that? No, because I'm just physically suited better to do that, right? Who has more insights into the emotionality of our kids and can give a really nurturing experience to our kids? Melanie can, right? Just biologically, she's hardwired to do that. And that's not to mean that I can't do that, because I do. I have, we have little kids, and I have a, little sweet daughter. And does it mean also that she doesn't have the physical capability to chase a coyote through the woods? Yeah, she can do that. She's got legs. She can do that. But who is better suited for that?
Yeah.
We are. So I really like it. I think Jordan Peterson talks about this too. It's like there are real things that men are better at and are better well equipped to do things
Yeah.
with, right? We have
Right.
different tools. Clearly, we have
Yep.
different tools. And then on the converse of that, there are things that Melanie and female and nurturing moms are way better at, right?
Yeah.
So I like to look at it as who's better at it in that way. Okay. And if we have to go against cultural norms in that way, like, oh, I can cook better. Okay,
Yeah.
well, Melanie is more detail oriented and can make a more beautiful table or end piece or whatever with wood and saws than I can. Okay, I'm not going to be weird and butthurt about that. But
Yeah.
then, so we really kind of go into those, I guess, biological norms, but are open and honest. Like, hey, you do that better, do it. I don't care if it's
Yeah.
male or female kind of thing. Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
know that was super long winded, but
No, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to like, it's my belief and perspective. And I think what you're saying here is like, we're in a partnership. Like my marriage is a partnership. There's things I don't want to do that Jody does. There's stuff that Jody knows that only I can do, kind of similar to what you're saying, just being a man or being capable of certain things or being better. I'm more better at certain things, so I should be the one accountable to do those things for the good of our marriage, or
right,
and vice versa with her. Like I shouldn't be in there cooking the dinner, yet just time. I don't have the capacity to do the dinner. She does. That's our partnership. We have different areas of accountability, and it's something. And it just drives me bananas, because I've seen these relationships where the guy's the boss, he's in charge, and I have a lot of empathy for, I'll keep it traditional, like the female in that relationship that is almost treated like property, like,
mm-hmm.
in a certain way, or this hierarchy. And it came to, and I'll probably get hate mail for this one, but it wasn't me. I'm just going to talk about the story here. I got a group text with some friends, and we're all married couples, and one of the guys, and look, it was a funny joke. Let's be real. It was a funny joke. He sends this joke. It was a picture. It said, hey, if you can push a baby carriage, you can push the lawnmower. So help with the grass or something. Look, it was funny. Yeah, I get it. Haha. Whatever. I don't condone it. But I did kind of call him out, and I said, hey, man, hey, that's funny. So don't take me as a stiff here. Haha. But man, show some respect, because I don't see you pushing a baby carriage, right? And taking care of them kids. It's a lot of work too,
Right,
and to this point, right, there's cutting the grass, around here, at least. Like I cut the grass. Jody don't want to cut the grass.
right,
I
yeah,
enjoy it. She doesn't. I do it. She takes care of the kids. She enjoys it. I love my kids, but she's better at nurturing them than I am, because I can be a hard ass at a time, like stop
right,
crying, do some push-ups type of guy at times, right?
right,
Like, but
yeah,
but they need nurture, and that's what she's there for. So it's a partnership. I don't respect this mindset or mentality that the wife's not capable, or she's like treated like an employee,
mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
and that was my thing. It's like, hey, I'm keeping it all cool. I love all you guys, but remember, it takes a king and queen to rule the kingdom,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's what's been the success in our marriage. I'll tell you that. I'm
yeah,
not telling Jody what to do. She's not telling me what to do. We're in it together,
yeah,
mutually.
exactly. And you hold each other accountable,
Yeah.
and you go, hey, these things need to get done to create the kind of family, house, business lifestyle we want, right? So we talk about this with coaching clients. What is our shared vision? Okay. Like the shared vision, the collective vision of both of us. And then I'm better suited to do this. You're better suited to that. I'm going to be accountable to myself. I'm also accountable to you and our kids, right? To do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. If I happen to be better at it, okay, that's
Yeah.
great. And there's something really rewarding in this. And I think a lot of people confuse this, but the times when I've done like super, and I don't know, maybe we'll get hate mail for this to like, black and white everything, but the times when I've done super like masculine kind of aggro things, whatever it is, like from hunting to punching a guy because he should have been punched to like chasing a coyote or something, I feel like alive. Does that make sense? You're like, hell
Oh yeah.
yeah, this is awesome, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it feels amazing. And I don't want to do anything that like tamps that down, just because, oh well, we want to be whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
want to behave in a way that tamps down Melanie's innate kick-ass motherhood, nurturing like an awesome queen, or like being super soft. Like,
Yeah.
shame on us guys if we do tamp that stuff down, and shame on the women too. If you're not letting your man or woman do that stuff and you're pushing them down,
Yeah.
then what are you doing? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
And
love
like,
the. Oh, go ahead.
no, what were you going to say? Sorry.
No, I really love the example that you said your wife's name is Jody. That you and Jody have a partnership. You don't tell her what
Yeah.
to do. You don't. She doesn't tell you, but you have an understanding and an accountability. Like, this is how we want to make it work. Okay, let's do it, kind of
Yeah.
thing, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's just that analogy, like a partnership. I would say like her grandparents, I want to say they're married like 40, 50 years. They've both since passed. But I remember when we got married, like Jody and I got married at 18, 19 years old, number
Oh
one.
wow.
We got married young, high school sweethearts, all that jazz. So I would say like the odds were against us to make it, let's say. We got married fresh out of high school. I was in the Marine Corps, so we had a long distance relationship for a minute, and I remember one of the things that we learned, her grandmother told us when we got married, she's just, and to your point, kudos to you for calling it out. She's just like, communicate, 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 like
Mm-hmm.
communicate. And so to the analogy of a partnership, like you can, even in business, right? Could you imagine like you're 50-50 partners in a business and you don't effectively communicate with them, right?
Right.
Like that business isn't going to work, man. Like it's
Mm-mm.
not going to work. And so there's no difference here, in from the regard of leadership and doing what needs to be done, from taking a responsibility and leading together, similarly.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think when couples can get to that realization, then that's when we really start going, oh, okay, we're running. It's like a business, like,
Yeah.
50 partner, like, yep, we're on the same page. Things are going good. We're rolling. When things come up, we talk about them quickly. We share expectations to make sure that we're on the same, shooting towards the same target kind of thing. And
Yeah.
when couples can begin to do that, it literally opens up like, I didn't know marriage could be this way.
Yeah.
This is wild,
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes then we have upper limit problems of like, oh, how good is too good, and is this too good? Which way, you can talk about self sabotage or something like that. But the
Yeah.
couples, and I believe me and Melanie are here because we do a lot of work on it. But the couples who are like in constant communication, like, okay, checking in, talking about this, sharing expectations, resolving conflict when it comes up in a healthy way, that's when things really start to get cooking, and it's
Yeah.
a good place to be. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And I think this call, I wouldn't uh, be satisfied if I didn't mention like that book, The Five Love Languages. I'm sure you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with that. Yeah. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that was a great one for me to bring awareness to how I could be better in the marriage. Right. And just kind of going through and understanding that. It's been a while since I read it, so it'd be a hard time for me to quote it, but Jody and I went through that. Just, I found the book or heard it and read it. And I said, hey, read this. And then we kind of came back. I was like, so what was your love language? And hers was quality time. I know that. And that awareness, now I make sure I'm intentional about that's what she needs. And in our partnership, that's what she needs of me, especially. And that's a big part of our lives now. Like we're every morning, like she's a 4 a.m., riser like me, our first hour of the day is having coffee together. Right now we're doing 75 hard together. So our first hour of the day is a coffee walk, like we used
Yeah.
to just get up, sit there and talk and communicate, and talk for an hour. And then I would start reading. So you go to the gym, but now we walk together, right? Like we make sure like that's a part of our routine. It's a part of our system that quality time is there,
Yeah.
and that was, a good, like say increased awareness for me to make our marriage better,
Yeah, yeah. The
keep her
five love
happy.
languages is really good. One of the things that couples get in trouble with, though, is we give love the way that we want to receive love. You know
Sure.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And we're like,
Yep.
"What's going on? Hey, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm doing all this stuff." But that's how you want to receive love. So I just encourage people to be really aware of that. Is like, just because I like physical touch does not mean that Melanie is going to like physical touch all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it doesn't have to be, right? I have my own thing, and I need to serve her and love her the way that she feels love and feels service in that way. And then
Yeah.
she'll return that for me too. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's just one I know. I like the married couples I care about. Like, hey, have you ever read Five Love Languages? Like, check it out.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is worth talking about is those people who aren't married yet. You know, they're thinking about getting married, or they would like to get married someday, or they're in a relationship and they're thinking about marriage. Like, what would be your advice to them to know when they're with the right person or it's the right time? What what would be
Yeah.
some advice
Yeah.
there?
That's a great question because we get a lot of emails about this is like, oh, when do I know when this is the thing? And I give the analogy of there was no right time to have a baby, right? I mean, you guys have kids, you know what I'm talking about. And of course you can be wise about it. I'm not going to be like an 18-year-old without a job and go, hey, I want a kid. That'll make things better. No, that's just not being smart about
Yeah.
it. But when you're, a committed couple, you've been together for a while and you have jobs and you can support, a kid that you make, there seemingly there's a smart time, but there's not a right time. Like, oh,
Yeah, I like that.
how will I know if I'm ready? It's like, well, the truth is, I don't think that you will be, but you can be super smart about it. But going to the single folks who aren't in relationships right now, or who are, contemplating getting married or whatnot, first you have to really know what you want, right? It always goes back to what are you doing? How are you showing up? And I was talking, to you about that in the pre-show stuff. I actually made a list of, it was more of a compatibility list, not like, okay, this lady has to be, 5'3", these dimensions or whatever like that. It wasn't a superficial list. It was a real list because I'd done the work and I knew myself. Like, hey, Seth, you would benefit and could contribute in a marriage, in a relationship with another person who had these specific qualities or kind of background thing. And like I
Yeah.
knew because I've did undergrad stuff and then also did graduate studies. I knew that I wanted to be with someone who could have a conversation about well-read things. I was like, okay, that's a compatibility thing. For me, it's like, okay, they have to be growth mindset oriented and future oriented because I know I wasn't just going to sit around and be a stick in the mud and not create things and try things, so I had to partner with someone who was like-minded in that way. So I literally created a list. I think it had like 5 bullet points or something, or maybe it had 7. I think 2 of them were like, that's not as important as I thought it was. And knew that I wasn't going to like dive into a partnership with Melanie if these things just weren't there, because I was like, I dated this chick for 5 years prior to that and had other girlfriends. I was like, I don't want to mess around anymore. I'm just like, let's pull this trigger. Let's burn this boat. We're going to take this island, right? But
Yeah.
I did it in a smart way. So I would encourage folks to be like, okay, take an hour, take, a couple of days and really formulate a list. Who would you partner? Who would you pair well with? Not someone who likes exactly what you like, right? Because there is this aspect of opposites attract. And I'll tell you, some of the best, most difficult, meaningful lessons that I've learned just about life and myself in general have come from being married. It's like, man, the crucible of marriage is like, if you're open to it, you will learn things. You'll be like, hate your life for a while, even. Like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But if you're open minded and growth oriented, you're going to come out on the other side a better person, right? A
Yeah.
more complete person. So again, it goes back to to ownership. Know who you are, know who you would pair well with, know where you've gotten in trouble in the past. Like, I mean, because we've all probably been in relationships where like, yeah, that was not good. We were just there for like a good time kind of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
be real with yourself in that. Like, okay, why am I here? How can I help her or him be the best person they can be also? Because it's not just a list of like how this person can serve me and meet my needs and all that stuff. Oh, she has to have, or he has to have this. No, so we attract what we put out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a million different sayings like that. Like, um, um, we endure what we allow. So if I allow like laziness or not self discipline in my own life, then I'll probably pair with someone who also doesn't have those goals for themselves, right? So first get yourself right, and then you're going to attract people who are also getting themselves right, right? And
Right.
you're going to meet up, and that synergy and that synchronicity will happen, and you'll know. But as far as like, yeah, have all these things in order, then you'll know. That, in my experience, just doesn't exist. I don't know
Right.
about you, but no, not
Yeah.
not so far, not so far.
Yeah, no, I love the way you worded it. And while you're talking, so the other way I've heard the thing that you were last describing was, if you want a 10, you got to be a 10, right? To
Perfect. Yep.
which I thought that was cool. That was a new one to me. But I think the other thing you reminded me of while you're talking was, back to Jordan Peterson on, something I remember him saying about your ideal partner. He's like, you want a partner who will side with your potential, is how he worded it, right? So you
Hmm.
want someone that is going to side with what you can be, not just tolerant of what you are right now, right? Like if you're an alcoholic, you don't want a partner that's another alcoholic, and it's you want someone who's going to go, hey, you're better than this, like, and they're siding with your potential, right, of who you
Right.
who the best version of you, I guess, is. And I thought that was really powerful, like, because and again, I would encourage people, beyond order, I think it's chapter 10, probably one of the best things I've read about marriage that I can relate to from my experience, but it really digs into things like that. But I thought that was a really powerful thing where it just talked about, you don't want to just be accepting, like you want someone, just accept the mediocrity, and like you want someone who's going to challenge you to be that best version of you, that they're siding with your potential. And there's never going to be
Yeah.
anyone that's perfect, right? Like, and I think it was funny, like I think he worded it in such a way, it's like, the reality is, if you found that perfect person, they're going to run from you screaming, because of what
Exactly.
you are. It was hilarious. And I was like, yeah, and it was just, and he just kind of talked about your growth together, and becoming one truly. It's
Yeah.
really great the way he brings some value to the
Yeah.
success of a marriage.
That's awesome. And yeah, if you want a 10, you got to be a 10. If you found like a 9 or 10 out there and you're a 2,
Yeah,
there's literally no way that that's going to happen, because 9s and 10s aren't looking for 2s, right?
sure,
It's like
sure.
we are the sum of the 5 people we hang out with the most,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Um, that 9 and 10 are hanging out with other 8, 9s and 10s,
And if
right?
if they're down for you, you better start asking some questions, like why. There's more to the
Right.
story you don't know
And
about.
they're in trouble, right? They're in a real slump or something, kind of thing. But that can be depressing if we look at it in that way, or it can be one of the most inspiring things ever. Like, yeah, what am I doing that got me to a 2? What do 9s and 10s do?
Yeah,
Let me do that, And if it takes a couple of months, if it takes a year, I mean, oftentimes it takes that realization for us to change, and then it's just a maintenance thing, because the saying, what got you here won't get you there. So it's always like
sure.
you have to do more. I just finished 75 hard for the second time. Well, once I completed in 2020, and then finished 75 hard in 2021, just, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago or so. And what I was doing at day 74, I was going to have to do a little bit more on day 75, because it's really hard. And if I want to do that again, I'm going to have to get in the mindset and the planning and the mode of like, okay, I'm gearing up to do it again, because what got me there, I mean, it was really different. Doing it a second time was, it had a different effect, and it was almost like, oh man, this is even more difficult, because you feel all the same emotions, and it's just like, okay, I'm putting in the hours, putting in the hours, putting in the hours. and kind of it was boring almost, just like, okay, I'm
Sure.
up again and I'm, before the sun comes up and doing the same thing, eating the same thing. Um, but yeah, the idea, and this goes to even folks who are in, uh, this can go two ways. In bad relationships, what got you here in this bad relationship right now will not get you to a good, healthy relationship, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a healthy relationship, what got you here won't get you there because you've already passed that threshold. It's like a mountain. It's like, oh, I can look 5 steps back, and 5 steps ago was pretty awesome. It was a hell of a lot better than 30 steps ago. But
Yeah.
what got me there is not going to be 5 steps forward because the terrain is different. My muscles are sore, whatever it is. A lot of physical analogies, of course. So I'm going to have to step it up and go, all right, I'm going to do what I need to do to, like you said, when you're in the Marines, okay, just one more day, one
Yeah.
more day. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah. Now I love it. That's awesome. So to round this thing out, man, to tons of gold here. So people who listen to this are going to get a lot of value out of it, but let's round it all out. If you had someone that you cared about, they came to you, and someone that you wanted to make sure their marriage was successful, as you do with all your clients, I know, and they asked you, what's the one thing that you would tell them that makes marriage successful? What would you say?
I would say a healthy marriage starts with a healthy you. And that means you, if you want a 10 marriage, you got to be willing to look at ways that you have been showing up not as a 10. You've been complacent here, you've gotten butthurt here, kind of thing. So if you want a 10 marriage, you got to be a 10 partner kind of
Wow.
thing.
Yeah.
And because a lot of our potential clients come to us and go, oh, this is terrible, this is terrible. Look at, it's their fault, right? But the first thing we do is like, what have you been contributing to this? Let's
Sure.
look at that. And then we're going to start there for both of you, and then start pushing forward. So yeah,
Yeah.
things didn't change for Melanie and I until we did that. Things don't change for our coaching clients until they do that. And all the books that I read, all that I am gravitated, are saying the same thing, just that wisdom. If you want something, you got to look at yourself and not outside of yourself to get there. Now, of course, we can get
Absolutely.
help and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the one thing I would say. Like going back, I'm just going to steal. You're going to hear that saying a lot. If you want a 10, be a 10. If you want a 10 marriage, be a 10 partner.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. So, if someone's interested in the services, how do they find you? How do you find a podcast? All the
Yeah.
how do we work with you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, Facebook, Anatomy of Marriage. Our website is called thestudleys.com, STUDLEYS.com. Excuse me. That's our last name. And then if you if you have any questions about coaching or anything like that, email coaching@anatomyofmarriage.com, and we'll set up a call. Geez, sorry if I have to cut this part out. I don't have any water. I'll do all that over again. All right. Oh, take two.
You made it.
All right. Yeah. So if folks want to find us, connect us on social media. It's on Instagram, Anatomy of Marriage, Facebook, Anatomy of Marriage. We have several groups on Facebook. Our website is thestudleys.com, STUDLEYS.com. Email me if you have any questions, anything like that, like Seth, you're full of crap there, or like tell me more about coaching. I want to know. I want some of what you guys got. Email me directly, coaching@anatomyofmarriage.com. I'll give you my cell. We'll hop on a discovery call. We'll serve you. We'll try to do the best we can to help you out.
Awesome. I love it, man. Hey, powerful session, dude. I appreciate you
Yeah, thanks,
a
man.
ton, man. This is one of my favorites so far, dude. This has been great.
Awesome. Yeah, keep on doing it. I love what you do. I'm so glad our mutual friend connected us. And yeah, love it, man. We're in the same space, and it's good to be here.
Same. All right, man. Well, thank you. Till next time. We'll do it again.
All right, brother.
Thank you.